This is a really exciting panel. This is Hoop Dreams at 25. Is youth basketball any wiser now? And really asking the question of how well basketball is serving all kids. And this is an important question because basketball is played by more kids in this country, 4.2 million, just at the 12 and under level than any other sport. So if we're going to get youth sports right in this country, we've got to get youth basketball right. It's got to be a good player. It's got to align with best practices. It has to work with other sports to be able to create the kind of childhood that we want every kid in this country to have. Hoop Dreams, as Dan expressed, is really one of the most influential movies in a couple different ways. Number one, it pretty much launched the sports documentary genre. So 30 for 30, everything you've seen on HBO and otherwise. This guy to my left, who I'll introduce in a moment, helped get off the ground. The second thing is it really, the theme. It underscored the fact that there is something wrong with our sports system and how well it is serving kids. It launched a lot of thought in this space and in some ways actually provided the foundation for Project Play and the questions that we put on the table and try to have people think about and drive toward solutions. So, let me just introduce our, really incredible set of speakers here. To my left is Peter Gilbert. Peter was one of the filmmakers of Hoop Dreams and is now a professor at Wake University's documentary film program. He's won national and international honors for his groundbreaking work as a producer, director, and cinematographer. He's filmed a lot of AAU basketball through the years and, like the man to his left, has witnessed the inner workings of youth basketball culture. And the man to his left really needs no introduction. This, of course, is Chris Webber, who you're a little bit familiar with here in the state of Michigan. Chris is, come on, yeah.
Look at us,
Former NBA All-Star, University of Michigan star, remember the famed Fab Five? They brought in the really short shorts. Thank you for your innovation there, Chris. He actually appeared in the film Hoop Dreams because he was the nation's most sought-after recruit at that time. Today, he is a Turner Sports NBA analyst and broadcasts the NCAA tournament. So I want to get started here. Peter, can you just give us a quick synopsis for those folks in the room who may not have seen Hoop Dreams or haven't seen it in 25 years and need a refresher?
I'll try. I will try, but it took us 8 years to film, and it's 3 hours long. So I'll do my best.
Cut it to 2 hours. Yep.
Yeah. But basically, we followed the stories of William Gates and Arthur Agee and their families, two inner city kids who really had this dream that basketball was a way out. And I think for us as filmmakers, what we were looking at was we were impressed with the kids and their families and where they were coming from, but we worried also about, is basketball their way out? And we followed them through their entire high school years. We saw them go through rough times, really hard times, and also some really good times. And there was a lot of stuff, very quickly, just to say, that was, I think some of the wrong underpinnings that began to happen in basketball you see in the film. There were also some incredibly great things like Coach Bedford at Marshall High School, who was this incredible coach. So I think it's an interesting film to look at sports, society, and how much all of it means to us personally, and also what is it that we are still, I think, selling to our youth about the importance of sports.
So let's play a clip of it. Central characters again. Arthur Agee and William.
Arthur Agee and William Gates.
When I was young, when I was little, that's all I used to think about, the NBA. If I set my mind, I can go. I can go. Get in good college, I can go. But if I don't, I ain't gonna be no drug dealer, cry about it, come back and, stick up gas stations and nothing like that, Probably going to comedian or architecture, something like that.
You don't think that you'll have the kind of tough times like that your dad's been through?
Nah. I can't say that I will. I can't say that I don't. I don't know.
You know, 4 years ago, that's all I used to dream about was playing in the NBA. I don't really dream about it like that anymore. You know, even though I love playing basketball, but, you know, I want to do other things with my life, too.
Hi, Daddy. Hi, baby. How you doing? How you doing? I love you. I love you. Tell Daddy thank you.
If I had to stop playing basketball right now, I think I'd still be happy. I think I would.
Thank you, Daddy. When Daddy gets you? Mommy.
That's why when somebody say, man, you know, when you get to the NBA, don't forget about me and all that stuff, I should say to them, well, if I don't make it, but you don't forget about me.
Yeah. So, look, this is a film that did not have high production value, but I think the real benefit of it was the incredible emotional intelligence that you applied to the filming. These young men showed their vulnerability, and what you selected and what you put in that film really allowed us to get into their lives, and therefore allow us to reflect ourselves. You know, it was just incredible.
These were really brave kids, brave families, that it takes a lot to open up your life. And part of the thing that we had to say to them as filmmakers was, look, right now things may be bad or not so great, or you're going through a rough time. But what we were hoping was 25 years down the road, people are still going to look at their story and people are going to learn from it. And so I think that's the thing that they really were amazing how much they trusted us in that regard.
Yeah, they're incredible. Chris, you were a young man at that time. In fact, you were in the film. You were in the film because you were the top, young basketball player in the country. Tell us about how old were you and how did that film impact you?
This film,
You would have been a senior in Nike camp senior year.
that's when you filmed it,
Right.
Yeah, and so about 17 years old. And for me, even though, and you were correct in saying the production value wasn't much, but I think to my culture, the production value was more than a Disney movie or anything else because I saw myself. And it was the first time I got to see myself or my family or structure because I don't think what people realize, even though I was the #1 kid then, I was dreaming with these guys. You know, you're a kid, you don't know what #1 means or how far you're up the ladder, or at least then you didn't with no social media and those type of things. So guys like this, we were rooting for because you don't know guys' situations, and then to see, you know, one of the guy's father sell drugs on the corner and him getting teased, or to see a guy hurt, and when you see Arthur at the end say, I'm happy now, I'm okay, well, I think that's only because he had a child. That would be interesting to kind of understand that, and so for me and my generation, this was the beginning of kind of taking back your own narrative and making sure you expressed it and not letting people that don't know you or don't know your situation or never been around you tell people what your life is like. So Peter is my friend and business partner, but I try to thank him as much as I can for making this movie because it's easy to have these conversations if you're not where they are. And so you need to understand what's really going on in order to combat the different things that are happening within different communities. So to me, it's very important. People talk about the Fab Five or UNLV and things like that. This was the first time they saw us before we came out. So I thought it was pretty cool what you did.
So I want you to talk about your pathway as a basketball player. When you got started, when you were doing rec, did you do AU, travel, high school, et cetera? And compare that to the pathway of kids today.
Wow. The first time I was noticed, I went to school called Temple Christian in Eastern Michigan, looking for my father to see if he gives me a nod, but yeah, Eastern Michigan, is that right? Yeah, so, I'm sorry, in Inkster, and I was so blessed. Channel 7 came out and did an interview, and they showed me, it was the first time I'd ever seen a TV camera, and they came in your face and they say, wow, you're gonna be a great basketball player one day. So these are the first times you're hearing these things. And they say, what college do you want to go to? And being a Magic Johnson fan, Michigan State, right away, that's where I'm going, the green and white. And
Sorry, Michigan State fans. It didn't happen.
they got my brother, it's okay, I don't feel sorry for State. No, that was somewhat of a real introduction into the world as far as how people respond, those type of things when you haven't even reached puberty yet. Then it started to, I was blessed to go to small Christian schools, so the level of family and community were really strong there. And so we had, I won't say good coaches, but we had good people that were the coaches. And most coaches really aren't good. I don't want to bust anyone's bubble. But it's about being a better person to show these kids the tenets of life, to show these kids how the best parts of sports is what make all of you successful. So being a great teammate, coming to work early, leaving late, finding out what you can't do well, making yourself better, having something bigger than yourself. You can't wallow in pity when you're on a team. You may have to sit on the bench or you may have to start a night. So when you go into a community that teaches you, hey, Chris, if you don't play well today, or my mother would say if you don't play well, or if my mother would say if you don't get a B or above, you can't play. Well, I'm getting a B for the team, not necessarily for myself or my mom, but I want to keep going. And so for me, the wonderful structure of how I was introduced to basketball was great. I never had pressure to play. I played every sport. Football is my favorite then, and I would play football in the street, baseball in the street, those type of things. On Saturday, my block Biltmore would go over to Gilchrist, and my father, if you had good grades, he'd take us over there, play artificial quarterback. And so sports to me was just always incredible because I heard about the positive, the wonderful things out of those. And so getting a little bit older and going through the process of playing AAU and those type of things.
What
for
age
me,
did you start AAU?
I started AAU, I'm not sure, maybe 13, maybe 14, but the culture was different. So I really don't want to compare kids in my day to kids today because it's 100% different. Back when I played, if you were in 7th grade, and I had a friend of mine, he went to maybe Detroit Mercy or somewhere, Detroit Mercy, middle school, but he got in trouble because he played for a CYO team and AAU. So when I grew up, you could only play for one, and that was fun for us because I still wanted to play during the baseball season. I wanted to go cross country. I wanted to do track, so I didn't want basketball to go through every season. And I learned from some of the best athletes that the best athletes are 2-3 sport guys, that if you want to get great footwork, you got to do track. If you want to get your endurance, you have to do long distance. I even had guys that would train with the volleyball players. So when I grew up, it was different. And female volleyball players, female hoopers, and so I grew up in a culture where it was about the sport, and if you're good at one, you could probably be good at another. Mm-hmm. The recruiting went up a little bit, or ramped up a lot, and I was really blessed to have an AAU coach. His name was Curtis Hervey. When I say he wasn't a good coach, you don't know the NBA stuff or things that take a kid to another level, but what he did with me and my heart, what he did by having us focus, study together, those type of things kind of reinforced the principles of my parents and under the sports kind of genre title, and it made my life very fun in sports. I was committed to a team, and our AAU coach and our high school coach had a relationship. So my coach, Coach Keener, he knew that we were his during the year, and he knew that we were our AAU coaches during the summer. And if they're two men that should communicate and want what's best for the kids, then they should have a plan to make us better each year and not be selfish trying to hold us hostage to each entity. And so I really thank the village that I grew up with, the people that were surrounding me, because it's not about the coaches, it's about the people who are coaches. And I had some really good men direct me coming up in high school.
I think that time period was also so different because AAU was really at its beginning in many ways. And So when we started to make Hoop Dreams, really, Steve James and Frederick Marks, who I made the film with, they were really fascinated with doing a film just on one street court. Because street basketball was sort of where you made your name. I mean, in Chicago at least, that was sort of like the place. And kids played outside and you knew each other. It was the way that everybody met each other too. And it had sort of this whole rule system, you know, like if you lost, you sat. It was this whole way of mediating and sort of meeting people who were really different than you. And so we were fascinated in that, but we came in right at the time when that started to fade away. And basically high school coaches, I mean, I think one of the things that we saw was how important good high school coaches were to the kids because they were the conduit then. Now I think AAU coaches are much more the conduit.
The difference, Peter, between the coaches back then was that a high school coach had to be a teacher.
Right.
So a high school coach had to know how to communicate with students, how to interact. And today, because it is who you know, you can be a coach just by association, meaning I know a good kid, he's really good. I'm not gonna let any of you guys get around him. I'm gonna coach him. That's the way it's gonna be. And now you're considered a great coach when really it's the talent that you have. And that's how it's changed. I mean, here in Detroit as well, you know, every weekend, every Sunday after church, we would head straight to 1300 Beaubien because 1300 Beaubien was the police station and PAL was there. And so all the police officers I knew, they were our coaches, and so I got to watch guys that came before me, like Derek Coleman and Steve Smith and all these guys, and so it was more of a community culture, and we were happy to play AAU to get out of town and to see someone else or to meet another player or to see how you fared against another city. It was that small, but it was more of a cultural pride, which allowed every city to have their own identity, like New York. They'll hate me, but they can't shoot jumpers. They could just dribble. Detroit, we had toughness. California was this way. And so it was a much more community-driven sports entity then because we didn't have the internet. You didn't have, you know, 10,000 followers. You'd have to read a little small book, Street and Smiths or something else to see who was ranked in those things. So I think growing up in my time was easier because the culture allowed for it to be different. I can't imagine the pressure, or I can't imagine, you know, being 12 years old and being told you can make it to the NBA and leaving it because you don't have the skill, but because a coach told you that to keep you around. And so really scared for the kids today.
12, that's late. I mean, today we have second grade AAU national championships. I mean, I've seen that.
It's crazy.
You know, kids chucking the ball from their hips, learning bad habits. Parents are like, the umbilical cord is still connected. They're in the ref's face. I mean, it is something else.
Not to be a bring down, but I mean, I filmed 4.5 years of AAU ball, following teams. And it's a film I'll never release. And partly because so much of what I filmed was and I hate to use the word, but it was dirty. And I really felt like that if I put the film out, it would be the kids who get hurt, not the adults. And they weren't just in good hands. And I get emotional talking about it because it's like one of those things where it was actually so dirty in my mind that no one noticed. They let me film everything. And no one noticed it was something that to me was very shady at best. Yeah. I'm not saying all of it, I'm just saying, but 60%. Mm-hmm. So, and my kid was playing AAU ball then. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, boy, I don't know, this is getting way far out there. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're seeing AAU ball on television in the summer because they need content. Mm-hmm. I think that's another thing that, you know, we're all part of this. Mm-hmm. I made Hoop Dreams, but I also have done tons of work for, you know, all other companies, ESPN, Nike, you name it. Mm-hmm. We're all part of the problem, too, in trying to make this work well for kids. Mm-hmm. So it's on us to help solve it.
Right. I mean, there are definitely some good things going on.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, USA Basketball and the NBA have worked together to create the first ever, guidelines around what's age appropriate and developmentally appropriate at different stages, you know, specific, down to like no to zone D between the ages of 7 and 11, between 9 and 11 years old. keeping it to 1 to 2 games a week, 2 practices, promoting multi-sport play up through 14. So we do have some organization, we do have some concepts that have been put in place in the past few years. How do we make sure that these best practices get embedded at the community level, that coaches are getting the message, or maybe even being held accountable to best practices?
What I would ask is that parents get involved. This is not a secret club. These coaches are not as good as you think they are. And what I mean by that is go back to your high school days and go to a guy that may have been a jerk. He's still a jerk today coaching your kid. They're teaching your kid how to communicate, how to problem solve. And so now, just as you mentioned, the NBA, USA Basketball, let's just think about it. They put together these wonderful guidelines from the best basketball minds ever. So what I look at that as, it empowers the parent. My best coach did not tell you much about basketball. He would get any of your kids to the next level. 2nd grade math, graduate studies, whatever, because he knows how to inspire. And what I pick up is that there is a culture going on that starts with coaches and parents, and it goes down, one of expectation. One of, oh, you see Chris do that, you should do that. No, you don't put in those hours. There's forcing your kids to work extra hours and play 4 games a week when they're not practicing at all. And so I really would encourage you guys, look inside yourself. You can do it. The reason why it's the #1 sport that's played is obvious. You don't need 9 people with baseball, 18 people with baseball. You don't need this many people with soccer. You can go hoop by yourself. It's very simple why we're the #1 sport. And with that, you guys can all find 5 kids and to play ball with. And if you want help, keep looking on the website or talk to other athletes. But the lessons that were taught how to get better, they're being circumvented now through Instagram or through a fancy move, not through playing against kids older at your church for 1 year, or not through no one gets a trophy, everybody stunk today. None of that goes on, and I think as parents, as teachers, as community leaders, as people that care, you can always insert a lesson inside of your practice lesson. And I think those are the things that are missing. When I talk to my friends that are head of companies, they always look for an athlete to see if they can hire, because supposedly we're supposed to know how to work harder, how to come in late, how to give the extra mile. And when you learn those things at a younger age, it makes everything else easier. Trust me. Disappointment, getting back over it. Where else as a kid do you fall and have to get up? Where else as a kid do you have to work so hard to get better? Because if it's in school, okay, but you know, we get those lessons later. But where is it that a kid really has to empower themselves and go through really adult life lessons, and sport is the answer. And so I would hope that with the guidelines of the league, with the new things, you ask, how can we make it better? By inserting ourselves in the process, because you know what's in that kid's head. And by the way, the #1 8-year-old kid is not going to the NBA. So let's quit putting that out there.
Yeah, and stop ranking.
It hasn't since LeBron, okay? And so when we talk about like the kids playing too many minutes, and those are for guys that think or that have already chosen their major in sports. How can you choose a major in sport before 14? How can you choose what you're going to be great at? Your body hasn't even developed. You haven't even grown, you know? So I would just encourage community leaders, parents, do not be intimidated by sport. You know enough. You know how to discipline your child. You know what encourages you. You know what gives them incentive. You know what does that for his friends. It is the best distraction ever to have a group of people that are all focused on the same thing, and you can use that to kind of control how they look at life, how they view things, and how they can just continue to get better.
Here, here. No,
But do we need to make it easier on parents? In other words, does structure drive culture? If you have 2nd grade national championships, right? You create this scenario where parents feel like their kid's going to be left behind unless they get slotted early and loaded up with the private trainers and all the other stuff. You know, I'm going to give away from, I talked earlier about the piece tomorrow morning, I'm going to give it away. In Norway, they have a concept, 93% of kids play in that country, great health outcomes and otherwise. No national championships before the age of 13. No regional championships before the age of 11. And the reason they do that is to keep the parents from going crazy and trying to aggregate all the best kids and ramp them up and get these big dreams in their head. So can we, should we be a little bit more judicious about when we offer up, we're trying to figure out the elite championships and who are the best kids at the early ages?
Well, I think one thing we need to do, this was something that I found all of my years filming sports with kids, is you got to take one word out, career. They should have fun. At 9, 10, 11 years old, they're talking about kids who are having careers. There's a scene in Hoop Dreams where William, he's a senior and he's talking to his coach as he's leaving. And, and the coach says to him, you had an okay career. You're pretty good. You're going to a D1 school. It's the only time I almost lost it with him as a coach. Because for me, it was like, look at the person. Here's this kid who, passed his ACTs, is going to a D1 school, had a child when he was 15 years old, took care of that kid. He's married to Catherine now. They have 4 children. He's a fantastic human being, and all that mattered to that guy at that moment was his career. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that we have to try to pull back from. Mm-hmm. And I know because I've messed up in it. My daughter was a D1 athlete, and I fell in love with it. Who wouldn't? It's hard. And I think I pressed too much and stuff like that. And junior year, she burnt out in college. And so I have, it's hard for parents. But I think the big thing that I want to say is we all have to do what you guys have been doing here today, which is we have to tell our stories. I'm a big believer in the power of stories. It's what I do for a living. And so everybody should be asking their parents, they should be asking Chris, they should be asking kids, young kids, what's going on? Talk about those stories of sports so that we actually can archive them and actually start to learn from them, because that's the key. It makes us human, is to be able to connect like that.
One thing, and I'll cut off, but Peter and I have been working on a documentary for 8 years, and I've just finished a book for over 8 years, and very proud about that. And what Peter was talking about is telling your story is so important, because my experience from being the kid all of you guys are talking about, and my friends were their friends. So I look at this a little personally. You know what I mean? It's not like, how are we gonna, I understand Norway, but we'll kill them in sports. So I don't think about that way. I'm telling you from an athlete, right? How we have to think. So Norway isn't the best example for me, but I would, I'm just saying this, don't say this to a kid. You gotta know, you gotta know what to do. But the main question, I think the scariest question that was asked, that he said, is the parents. So I just asked parents to get involved, right? And to be part of it, like we used to. Coaches, pastors, police officers, they were the coaches. They were in your community. It had a difference. And now we're worried about everybody else. If the NBA has made this wonderful umbrella to say, here are the rules with USA Basketball. If you have the rules, if you have the recipe, if I have a recipe to cook and the utensils, I can make anything, as long as it's clear. And you guys need to get involved. It's not going to stop. Corporations are still going to be in there. We talk about it. Second grade AAU basketball game, right? What's the difference between that and 14-year-old World Series? Because they were playing when they were in second grade. It's not a cutoff point. It's not a litmus test. It's not this. It's those that are concerned get involved. Do not wait. Do not sit around. You can get involved. You can find 5 kids and coach them. Today's with the new coaching techniques, find a coach for 200 hours or $200 an hour. And there's no resume, just that he played basketball at Oak Park for 4 years and he's going to be a coach. You didn't talk to his coach to see what type of person he was. You don't know his school records. You don't know. You have to get involved. The ones that I played with that had overbearing mothers and fathers, we laughed at them. So really you need to stop them because they're going to get bullied. It's not cool to have your mom screaming at the game. That's not cool anymore. It's still embarrassing. You guys have heard of like Lamar Ball and those guys, like how that goes on every single level. And so I just really implore you guys. I know the culture. I know these athletes. I was one of them. I work with them. I help these families today personally. You have to get involved. And you know the answers, especially with what the NBA and other leagues have done. You can be some of the best coaches out there because you care for the kids first. That means if a kid can't shoot, you'll really want him to get better and not say, oh, we'll just keep him, but we have our starter over here. And you'll really help the kids get better. You'll really give them exercises and ways to get better and books to read and things they never thought of that will just open their life to a whole new world beyond sports. But sports is the conduit. And I just really want to implore you guys. The answer is you get involved. You'll help a lot of kids.
Well, that would be that'd be a fine way to end this panel. That's the call to action. It's now in your lap to go home and fix this. He put it on you. So really want to thank our panel. Sure. Peter, Chris, terrific comments. Appreciate it.